One tendency of our minds is what gives birth to the ego, preserves the ego in place, and makes it very difficult to remove the ego as our main sense of identity. This channel is Meditation Amsterdam. My name is Pablo, and today we get to discuss the topic of fear. Now, I've made videos in the past explaining how the birth of the ego is a byproduct of our developmental processes as human beings. It is not that we forget something or mistake our identity for something. It is a natural evolution from being a mind that is singular to a mind that is fragmented and that starts to show preferences for things that are pleasurable, reassuring, and comfortable and predictable, and show aversion against things that are painful, uncomfortable, and unpredictable. And between these two prongs, a certain mode of mind arises which develops patterns of action and predicting abilities so that it can navigate its environment and try to always land on the side of the predictable and the comfortable, and always tries to move away from the unpredictable and the uncomfortable. And it starts to operate with such vehemence and such precision that it actually takes hold of our sense of identity. By the time we are toddlers, this process is well on its way. By the time we are teenagers, let alone young adults, our egoic sense of identity has become so rooted, so solidified, that it is all but impossible to realize that our entire identity has been hijacked and that we live in a world of object relations which is akin to a state of hypnosis. As if in a dream, essentially, surrounded by our own ideas, through a veil so thick and so convincing that it's impossible to believe that you are living, quote unquote, in the Matrix. That's one of the reasons that this movie is so relevant, is that moment in which Neo is offered the red and the blue pill, Morpheus precedes that choice by saying that unfortunately no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it with your own eyes. Meaning, I can time and again try to convince you, or by means of analogies and metaphors and sharing experiences, communicate the notion that you have a veil of mind which appears as the world, and you have a sense of self that is spurious, and you can intellectually understand that, and yet nothing will be achieved because you can't be told what the Matrix is. You can only wake up from it and realize that you had been completely hypnotized by your own mind. And this state of hypnosis is inconveniently kept in place by the mechanism of fear. Or if we want to be more precise, the mechanism of aversion and craving, which are two sides of the same coin. It's a movement of the mind away from the now. So this becomes a real problem because the movement towards comfort and pleasure and away from pain is addictive in nature. There's an enormous momentum pulling us towards that which is pleasurable and comfortable. And going in the opposite direction of that is rather painful in itself. Not only the movement towards discomfort is painful, but the discomfort itself is also dislikable. It's almost a double whammy. And the mind starts to make serious protest when we move in that direction. All you need to do is think of following a strict diet or entering a workout regime, or cutting back on whatever your guilty pleasures are or your go-to habits when you feel stressed and uncomfortable, dystonic. But at the heart of it all is the impulse or the recoil that we experience against discomfort, so that we are, you could say, afraid of discomfort. And that fear is very prevalent in our mind. You may not feel it all the time, but the moment the notion or the prospect of discomfort arises, you can immediately feel the contraction inside saying no to that. And as I said, the mechanism of the ego trying to recoil and avoid discomfort takes on a mind of its own, and it starts to feel like you. And it takes on such a force that we become, over time, unwilling to look under the hood. So fear, or the movement away from discomfort, starts to grow so sophisticated that it can even become afraid of itself. In other words, if you can point fear at this, that, or the other, right? Fear of financial loss, fear of loneliness, fear of not leaving a legacy behind and therefore being irrelevant, or having no sense of being somebody in the world, for example. Fear of lack of capacity to make things happen, you name it, lack of autonomy, self-respect, you name it. There could be many fears. But fear as a mechanism can also become afraid of itself. And when it coils around itself, it starts to feel like shame, for example, or guilt, which are the lowest possible emotions you can have. The reason they are the lowest is they are self-denying. Guilt or shame is fear recoiling onto itself so that fear doesn't even want to look at itself anymore. It's therefore a cul-de-sac. It's a dead-end street. It is an eddy or a whirlpool that has recoiled onto itself, or the snake eating its own tail. You could keep piling analogies on top of one another here. And when this happens, by its own nature, it just shoots to the outside and it starts to project onto the environment. And that's why self-inquiry is so powerful, but also so confronting and so difficult to do. Because what self-inquiry points at is the fact that if you look at what you mean when you say I, all you will find is fear. All you will find is fear that had departed away from itself and was unwilling to look at itself. Things that don't want to be felt. Things that with a little mind of their own say, don't look here, look elsewhere. And if you try to look into them, you will feel fear. So that it is fear of being afraid. And that needs to be broken through. And the only way to break through it is with a dose of courage, but also an even bigger dose of clarity. so that you can see things for what they actually are, which is nothing other than ideas in the mind, emotional tones, and sensations in the body. So you can break fear down through viveka, discernment. The clarity that shows you that that which appears to be fear is nothing but bodily and mental phenomena that can be looked at, and to make a decoupling, and this is something that I've been working on with several individuals as of late, to decouple discomfort from lack of safety. When you apply viveka, when you start to feel what you really feel, it is uncomfortable, but you need to come to understand through doing this on and on, that that which appears to be unsafe is actually only really uncomfortable, right? You can separate those two. Normally, that which feels safe feels comfortable, that which feels uncomfortable feels unsafe. But this is not really true. Uncomfortable is just uncomfortable. It's just discomfort. There's nothing unsafe about it apart from what the mind, the fact that the mind makes it so. So separating discomfort from lack of safety allows you to see the discomfort fully, and then the lack of safety disappears, which was the fear of fear. So that all the practices that you can put in place to address this can be a help at systematically seeing things for what they are, decoupling safety from comfort, and therefore fear can be seen, and you no longer need to be afraid of fear. This heralds the end of the I, because every I, every sense of self, is a fear that is unwilling to see itself. It is a fear that has become afraid of itself. And this is the way to start disentangling that Gordian knot, so that it is not seen as an unsurmountable problem, which, if seen from a distance, can appear to be so. When seen as I am afraid, that's almost unsurmountable, because fear is pretty scary actually, right? But if you see things for what they are through discernment and practice to disentangle things, then you can separate those two, and you can make some real progress in your self-realization journey and your journey of liberating yourself from fears that keep you hostage. So I'm very curious about your experiences on this one and whether the explanation resonates. And as usual, if you think that these are talks that other people would benefit from, then your liking, sharing, and subscribing makes the channel more available to others. I'll be back soon with more videos. And until then, cheerio and thanks for listening. Bye-bye.